I wanna feel every little bit of your sunburned skin. I just found out I got a new desire. You're telling me I cannot get any higher. But baby, I know when my love-searching soul is on fire. So won't you come closer? You know it's alright. Won't you come closer, baby? Stay with me tonight. We're in this crazy, hazy land. Let's get away from this bar. Baby, take my hand. We don't have to walk that far to get to my home place. I wanna show you something more. Let's reach out for a place where we've never been before. Don't need to hesitate, 'cause it's getting late. The night is warm and sweet. We're soaking from the heat. Let's go, just you and me. We can set us free tonight. So won't you come closer? You know it's alright. Won't you come closer, baby? Stay with me tonight. So won't you come closer? You know it's alright. Won't you come closer, baby? Yeah. Stay with me tonight.
I know that you're trying to fix me, but I don't wanna be like you. If you wanna take it back to the 50s, maybe I'm not the guy for you. You're dying not to work, but work until you die, you know that's true. Have you thought it through? 'Cause you love to tell me what to do. Say no, I'm not like you, I don't think that you get it. You should go and get out, I'll make you regret it. Someone like you should worry about. Maybe your two's upside down, and I'm not like you, I don't think that you get it. I don't wanna put on a smile, everybody expects me to. So you can keep your suit and your tie, gotta hope that it strangles you. Yeah, I do. You buy shit you don't need to impress the ones you hate, that's so f***ed up. 'Cause everything you own just ends up owning you. So, dear society, you suck. Say no, I'm not like you, I don't think that you get it. You should go and get out, I'll make you regret it. Someone like you should worry about. Maybe it's you who's upside down, and I'm not like you, I don't think that you get it. Ooh. Dear society, you suck. Am I the only one who's outside of this box? Who cares about your posts? I know they're only fake. Show us what you own and how much money that you make. Yeah, I know that you're trying to fix me, but I don't wanna be like you. Keep your stupid job, pretend that you're the person you wanted to be. And you're dying not to work until you die. And you're dying not to work until you die. You're dying not to work until you die. You're dying inside. Say no, I'm not like you, I don't think that you get it. You should go and get out and make it better. Someone like you should worry about. Maybe it's you who's upside down. I'm not like you, I don't think that you get it.
Good morning, Internet, and welcome to the Markus Morning Radio Show for February 8th, 2023. You know, it's crazy to think. 20 years ago, it was 2003. 2 years post 9/11. What was going on in your life in 2003? Were some of you even born yet? Which is wild. It's a wild concept to think about, you know? We have made it back to the 20s. So the 1920s were a pretty wild time, right? You know, it just, a lot of things happened. We had, Prohibition was in the 20s. There was just all kinds of stuff. The 20s happened, right? From 1920 to 1930, the 20s happened. Well, right now we're in 2023. We are back into the 20s. And I would argue that the 20s suck again. What was it? Was it the roaring 20s or the roaring 30s? Which years were roaring? The roaring 20s. So were the 20s good? Were the 1920s a time of prosperity? Because it was, let's see, it would have been, what war was most adjacent to the 20s? So there would have been World War I, which had ended. Look at that. I knew it. Isn't it amazing how you can track it with the wars? Because just cyclical, such is the world, right? It goes cyclical. So it's just we were in prosperity. Did we just win a war? Sounds like it. Women got the right to vote, suffrage, right? Man, what a word to use. That must have been hard for the PR cell. But no, so anyway, we're back into the 20s, man. And ultimately, the 20s are going to be nothing more than a blip in the history books if you give it enough time. But by knowing that doesn't mean that what we're doing right now doesn't matter. It doesn't mean that what we're doing right now is just to be talked about later. We're here to live the 20s. The same way that the people got to live in the 20s with their flapper dresses and their, rights to votes and all the changes and all the ups and downs and in-betweens of that era. We're now doing it for us. It's kind of cool, I think, to be part of the history books. As much as I've always said that the 20s are going to be referred to as the stupid era, it's going to be always referenced to this was the jumping point of humanity's next evolution. I really think that's where we are. We are in the digital revolution, the technological revolution, Elon Musk taking over the world, whatever it might end up being. Generation. That is what we're doing right now. And I think that's cool because eventually we're going to grow. Eventually we're going to grow old and we're going to be able to look back and go, man, do you remember the 20s? That was a wild time, wasn't it? And that's cool to me. Like the Depression right before the economic boom of the 50s. Exactly. It's cyclical. So much of it is cyclical. And I just think, because we're all working hard to be the best versions of ourselves, right, Exner? We're sleeping even if we're not getting the benefits of that sleep. But what we're doing is we're trying our best to take care of ourselves so that when the good time comes back around, we get to look back on it and be happy. Because ultimately, y'all, you ain't defined by the bad times. It just happened to be a bad time in your time. Your life is yours to tell. It's cool. To the victor goes the stories. And I will be the writer of my own story. I can tell you that right now. Because even if you don't plan on being famous, even if you don't plan on being, like I'm working towards being known. I want to be known, right? I think that's a very fun idea, to be known. I've been known in a very small context, but I want to be known in like hey man, you changed my life context kind of thing. And I think that's really cool. But with all that being said, if we just remiss to, well, the future's already written and therefore, my story is done. I can't change it. I'm just here to experience that shit. I don't know. It doesn't work for me. It doesn't work with the life that I do plan on living. Now, the biggest thing about plans, as we go into the news show today, so we got some, unfortunately, like sad news, but we're going to explain why it's not. And we're going to come out of these stories with a more positive outlook than what the ultimate by definition is, like a sad story. So we have the story of Knockout City getting shut down. We're going to talk about more chicken farms burning, and it's interesting. And then we're also talking about Titanfall 3, the secret game that we will never get to see, which that is just so sad. It breaks your heart. So that's what we're talking about today, and we're going to open it up with Knockout City is shutting down. So for those of you who don't know, Knockout City is a free-to-play, team-based dodgeball game where it's 3v3, and it's honestly kind of fun. I think they should have figured out a way to not make it live service online only, because they're shutting down. Now, if it had been a more traditional style game with an offline mode, Knockout City could continue on in the hearts of people who loved it. For the people who enjoy Knockout City, this sucks because they now are losing access to a game that they paid for. And, there's ways, it's as much as it's free to play, they bought skins, they tried to support the developers, et cetera, et cetera. But the problem is, it's shutting down. There will be no more Knockout City. And it was less than 2 years, man. And that's the problem. That is, in a nutshell, that is the issue with this free-to-play live service game. People have forgotten how long 2 years of content is. People have an unbelievable lack of appreciation for how much work goes into just making a skin or making an update to a game. Live service models have completely skewed what it means to be a gamer. We now expect constant corrections and constant fixes. We expect constant, updates and new content and et cetera, et cetera. But then we also expect it to be free. Okay, we've essentially lost what it means to be gamers. Being a gamer isn't about being popular. Holy shit. It's like, I understand that the times are changing, but it is wild to me that like games are supposed to be hip and cool now. No worries, Exner. You're always you're always in our hearts, and we know this. But ultimately, what is happening is we have said as gamers that we just don't want the games as they once were. Is that what's happening? Because here's the question when it comes to these games, right? So Knockout City, again, like I said, it's a dodgeball game that is going to be done on May 23rd. Knockout City is gone. And it didn't have to be gone. It didn't have to be. Because the problem is when you focus on cosmetics, that you are only addressing such a small subsect of gamers. And then as soon as that small subsect of gamers gets bored with your game and they don't have an addiction problem, they're gone. Now the issue is Knockout City was actually a fun game, but it was one layer. There was one layer to it. Play dodgeball. And because it was so it was simple, as much as it was fun, it was simple. Any longevity of the game anybody who knows anything about video games should have known that if they didn't do anything to make Knockout City more replayable, it would have been a one and done experience for most gamers. They would get in, they would enjoy it, and then they would get bored, and then they would go back to their favorites. That is gaming. That is the gaming cycle of gamers. But when you have this idea of like, no, 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 people are going to keep coming back year after year. And what we'll do is we'll keep updating the game. And by updating the game, I mean, we're just going to change the visuals. But the concept of the game will be exactly the same. Who knows about Fortnite? You know what Fortnite did right and still to this day is doing it right and is the main and honestly only reason it is still relevant? It constantly evolves and changes what it is. Back when it first started, Fortnite had an update every Wednesday. Every single Wednesday, the entire Fortnite gaming community logged in, wanted to see what was new. Right? And it wasn't just like, hey, look at this new skin. Granted, there were skins later, but that's not what we came for. It was challenges, it was pianos, it was mountains exploding, new guns, old guns get taken out, new gameplay, new items. It was so crazy. And that is why Fortnite started the free-to-play live service. Right? And the issue is when people try to duplicate Fortnite, but they only duplicate the parts that make money. Everybody's got a battle pass. Everybody's got some store with skin and cosmetics. Everybody's got a BR, right? All these things that Fortnite had, but what don't those games have? Weekly updates, seasons with unbelievable new content every time. Now, granted, Fortnite's fallen off a lot, don't get me wrong, but they still are doing updates constantly. That is the piece that these people don't get. Knockout City in 2 years never changed from being a 3-on-3 dodgeball game. Now, at your core, that's what you are. But I'm telling you, if you expect to do a live service game that has a longevity of more than a couple years, it has to be an evolving situation. It has to be like an evolving entity. That is what made Fortnite work, and that is what made Knockout City fail. Your cosmetics are only cool to people who care about cosmetics. But the gameplay, the fundamental reason that anybody plays a video game is because we want to have fun. And one of the easiest ways to have fun is to have new experiences thrown at you. Now, that's the rule that applies that if you want to do a live service, if you want to do a free-to-play. That rule doesn't apply when you charge money. If you charge money for a game and you have a plan on essentially what do we do after this game stops making us money, you will have a successful business. But you can't just hope to invent the coolest fork ever. No one has ever made a fork like this fork. It's still a fork, and people will always go back to their favorite fork. You can't be unique in a silverware drawer full of forks. It doesn't matter how different you are. You're ultimately copying the original. You're copying the Trident is what you're doing. Now the spork is a different situation. But to wrap it up, Valon Studio says that Season 9 will be the final season of Knockout City, with the game shutting down on June 9th, 2023. Well, Knockout City, you were a great game. And I truly believe that if you would have done it differently, you'd still be here. So to the future games, we don't look at this as a sad thing. We look at this as a lesson. To future games, you need to remember what it means to be a gamer and start giving the gamers what they want. Stop listening to Twitter and listen to your heart. Follow your heartstone and listen to this music.
It's Friday night and you are beautiful. The feeling is magic. I am so lucky to be
All righty. That was You're a Believer by Stone Keepers. Oh, man, that was a cute one. I liked that one. Lindsay came over and I started dancing with her boobies. It was nice. You know, there ain't nothing in this world that the great and powerful booba can't cure. And if we took more time to appreciate it, I would just like to think we'd all be a lot happier. You know, instead of fighting over, well, everything, let's just take a little more time complimenting and appreciating the booba. Doesn't seem hard. That's what she said. But as we listen to the tunes and think about the booba, we also got to take time to pay attention and see what's actually going on in the world right now. And I can tell you, friends, there's a lot going on in this world right now. And one thing that is particularly interesting is why I dropped to 0, is why I have such terrible internet. That's a big mystery. And it's just unfortunate when it happens, you know? So we're going to take a minute to just see what's going on. Because we're just keeping it cool.